you haven't given yourself enough time to need changes, you know, like, again, like we just said, sometimes it takes a couple of weeks. Like, you're not gonna, well, sometimes, very rarely, you know, you'll have someone who put new macros, boom, they drop 10 pounds. But that's usually someone who is coming from a very overweight state, perhaps, that is just reeling in their macros. And that's going to happen every once in a while because you're changing your eating habits so drastically. But most of us, you know, are going to be making subtle changes. And that's really what we want, is like slow and controlled weight loss at the end of the day, because that's going to be the most sustainable, the most healthy. But again, like, you're not going to be changing this every single week because you won't have time to see the changes that we need. So, I mean, just patience, man. This is a marathon, not a sprint, and that's the way you got to think about this thing, you know?
You also have to think, too, the more advanced you become, the less things change, okay? Mm-hmm. This is a big one. Timelines are not the same for everyone else. So when we say you haven't given yourself enough time, it doesn't mean that it should be like, oh, a week went by, a month went by. No, that's going to be different for everybody, okay? So, like, let's talk, for example, athletes, competitors, or anybody in performance on any level that's a high-performing athlete, person, you know, competitor, whatever. The progress they make is so much astronomically slower, even though they are doing the most advanced training you can do. Okay, and that's in sports performance. That's also in bodybuilding. That's in everything, right? Like, you know, it's funny. Like Dexter Jackson, you know, we Center Podium. We do their shows, all this stuff. Dexter Jackson, who's an old school bodybuilder, he won some Olympias and things like that. He's been competing forever. He just retired last season. I saw on his Instagram at some point, or maybe he showed me an event. I can't remember. But he's like, hey, look at my 20-year progress, because he's been doing this shit for so long. And he literally made like a Instagram square post of like 20 years of his progress. And literally you look at it, and it looks debatably identical for 20 years. But then if you really look at it and you're like, okay, let me see, then you start to see all the things that actually improved. But like, this guy was one of the top bodybuilders in the world. He won the Olympia. So like, okay, that's why that looks like that. That progress looks, you know, very minuscule, because they're training so hard and they're already so advanced that you just, at some point, you don't make huge strides overnight. And, you know, like you were saying, with people that, you know, fat loss, weight loss, really, you know, maybe people that are far that direction, they're going to maybe get on a plan, drop 10 pounds in week 1. And then they might drop 5 in week 2. They might drop 2 in week 3. And then again, as they get more advanced, they get better and better, you know, with their nutrition, they're training harder, doing all this. Progress will slow down. And it's simply not because you're doing anything wrong. It's just because you're advanced now. You're at a different level. You're into a new threshold where things slow down. There's a, you know, they used to call it, back when I was a wee lad, beginner gains, people, okay? Beginner gains.
New beginnings.
Like, I remember when me and my brother started working out in the gym when we were like, I don't even know, pretty young, 13, I don't know. I was getting jacked so instantly. Now I go to the gym and I'm like, fuck, what the hell? I'm doing so much harder shit now. When I was benching the bar trying to learn bench press, I was getting chest gains back then. Now I go to the gym, fucking do 400 pounds. I can't get any stronger. I'm like, so it's the same thing, people. So, you know, your timelines can be different. It can be totally different, and you just got to remember, maybe you haven't given yourself enough time to actually see that result, and that's another time when you can lean on your coach to make sure things are going right. And I've said it a lot, but communication is the number one thing you can have with a coach, any coach you have. Like, you should be able to communicate anything that is going on in your training environment, in your life, and all that. So if you're wondering why your macros aren't adjusting, if you're one of our clients listening to this right now, and you're like, oh, all these 7 things sound whatever, Ryan, but I'm not sure, man, message me then, ask me, and I'll tell you why your macros didn't change. I mean, that's another thing. A lot of times when I'm training people, I'll tell them exactly why. Hey, no adjustments today because everything looks good. It sounds fucking good. We're moving on. You know, that's it. That's all I got to say.